There's a moment when I forgive you, forgiveness leaves your mouth, and you know that there's still this lingering sense of pain in your chest, heaviness in your breath, or a holding, and it's still in your body. Your mind, or more so, your head, your headspace can say it. There's also this pressure we've been given to move on and to forgive. But if your body doesn't feel safe, and if your body doesn't know the process of true release, then you're not going to be able to. What if that's not a failure? What if that's your body teaching you that there's a deeper practice here? And it's not just a sentence, it's not just a magic wand, but there's an organic process wanting to happen. There's that heaviness in your chest, pain or tightness in your jaw, that lump in your throat. That means that there's still more there. And that means that maybe if you think you've forgiven, it's a performance rather than a true embodied experience. Welcome to Heartmind with Holli. I'm glad you're here. I'm Holli Sin, and grab your cuppa if you can, and join me today for another episode where we are going to look at healing from a transformative perspective, bridging the East and West with our science and our art of really inhabiting the mind. And I am excited today to talk to you about something really dear to my heart, something that I've talked just in different realms around. I've given workshops, I've given talks to groups around this idea and this practice of forgiveness. And it's a tricky one. It's a one that really gets everyone a little bit right here in the heart. And it's one of my 4 pillars that I work with as I go through the 7-step system. So it's part of every single step along the way of reclaiming your heart mind, reclaiming the prana in the home of your body. And I'm excited today to really show you and break down what forgiveness is all about theoretically. I'm going to follow this episode with a practice. And again, that's the name of the game. Practice, practice, practice. So let's dive in. I'm going to reference the Western neuroscience here a little bit here at the beginning, and it'll come back when I show you some of the theory I've developed around forgiveness. So when we have a wound, we're going to protect that wound. And part of that protection is going to be fight, flight, freeze, being ready to go into those responses as needed. So our psoas tightens, our gut stops digesting. We start to do all of those things when we're in our sympathetic kind of state, especially hyper-vigilant state. And from that place, we are not going to be able to forgive. Forgiveness requires an expansion that can only happen when we start to relax. And just as a reminder, a vagal nerve that's not very well toned will have a harder time switching states. And so it'll stay switched on in that sympathetic place. It will not let the heart know that you're safe now, and it'll keep the heart rate really racing. It is also, the vagal nerve is also where we're going to start creating the messages and that coherence between the brain and the heart. But if we aren't toning and practicing the toning of that vagus nerve, then that's where it can get cut off, basically, that communication between our brain and our heart. So with the prefrontal cortex, you might be trying to knock on that door saying, let's forgive. But if the body doesn't have a regulated system, then there's not going to be a way for that to be heard by the heart, or to be felt more so by the heart. So there's all kinds of tools these days for doing that with machinery and things to tone the vagal nerve, but really, yoga has been in the business of doing this through practice, through hatha yoga, through meditation, of starting to create that coherence. So I want to dive into the yoga philosophy, and this is where I have really started to develop a whole system around practicing forgiveness. In yoga and Indian philosophy, we have our chakras, and I want to talk about today the Anahata chakra. That's the heart chakra. It is the center of this particular energy, vital energy. And Anahata translates as the unstruck one or unstruck. There's lots of different ways to interpret that, but today I'm going to invite you to interpret it this way. It is the one, that little innocent, sweet part of our heart, that innocent heart that has not been struck or wounded. And so when we practice forgiveness and we use that practice from the heart, we're meeting that place again in ourselves that is unwounded, that is innocent, that is unstruck. How do we do that? And that is my, that is my invitation to you, that forgiveness practice will return us to that center and a clear and clean Anahata. And from the Anahata, we start to clear and clean other chakras with forgiveness practice. The Anahata is seen in yoga tradition as a visual mandala with the 6-pointed star. And so I've used the 6-pointed star to talk about the 6 different directions that you can send forgiveness. And you can work with each one of these directions. So let's talk about them. First, there is the direction of sister. Sister can be any peer that's feminine, and that could be your direct sister, or that could be your friends. That could be your even your colleagues that are on your level that don't hold authority. Anyone in your community that you see as a feminine peer. Then you have the brother, which is the same but with masculine. Could be your literal brother or a masculine peer. We have the mother, and this is going to be your literal mother, but also it's going to be any authority figure that is feminine, that holds that feminine authority for you. It could be aunts, it could be a boss that is kind of holding that feminine energy. It could be even grander, a grander energy to you as well. For example, a certain institution. Same with father. It could be literal father, authority figures, institutions that seem patriarchal, like our government maybe. The sister and the mother are to the left, and the brother and the father are to the right. Then the other 2 directions are up and down. Down is going to be the inner child, going deep into that memory place that we still hold of the inner child, forgiving the inner child. That's really, really hard. There's a lot that comes up there. And then going up into the creator, the spirit that holds us all, if you want to say God or goddess, but that sense of nature even. And I would even put the 5 elements here: earth, water, fire, air, space. And then the very center, which is not really a direction, but it's the very center, which is also a place of forgiveness, is our own mind, our own self, our whole self, right at the center of that star. So what happens is we're going to have a wound in that direction. And so I'm going to just show you a visual to try to replicate how it might feel. And then we guard around that wound. So we're going to need to go in and clear and clean that wound out with the elixir of forgiveness. And as we do that, it starts to, with practice and over time, just like dressing a wound over time, it'll start to clear and clean that until the direction of that it feels a little bit clearer and cleaner. Same for all the other ones, all the other directions, and you might have more thorns or more protection around one particular direction, as we know. And then the hardest one that I've found are the ones that are down the center, but particularly once we get to the real center, the whole self, the mind. And there's a lot of practices I've built around forgiving the mind. And that one's hard because we really want to protect ourselves and protect our own mind, our own reasoning. So forgiving the mind can be a big one where we need to spend a lot of time, but over time it starts to clear and clean, and we're able to then be in a freer, more innocent, more open, more compassionate part of our mind. It's more expansive, more curious, all of those things. This is really just a quick overview of what forgiveness looks like in practice. We would do maybe some postures, maybe some other meditative points, and I'll show you some of that in the next episode. Some other key things to know about forgiveness, as you've probably heard, but it's worth repeating now that you've seen this theory, is that forgiveness is, again, not a one-time action. It's not also forgetting. And it's not meaning that there isn't a boundary. You can forgive without letting that person back in your life. You can forgive from afar. It doesn't mean that you move on and you continue a relationship with someone. It just means that you free them from a burden of what they've done to you, for you, and maybe for them, but that's really their work. And that's the other thing that you've probably seen in a lot of forgiveness books, is that forgiveness is ultimately for you. And when you look at this, you're at the center of it. This forgiveness is for you to feel vibrant and clear and present and open to your life and your life force, your life energy. Forgiveness does not require you to self-sacrifice. In fact, it's the opposite. It's requiring you to self-fulfill. Fill yourself with your own life force rather than defending yourself from those directions and or from your own mind. It really closes you off. So you're becoming more the undefended self, the unstruck self, again, coming back to Anahata. In the next episode, I'll give you more practice. For now, let this land. Maybe this will start to percolate some consciousness around your own need and the directions in which you need to have that elixir. Again, it's not a sanitization where we're not saying that you weren't wounded or that there aren't things to look at in the wound, to be held. I talk about this all the time, to be held in that grief and that sadness or whatever emotions come from being hurt. But it's also saying that one of the things that are going to clean that wound is to start to forgive. I will put it in the description. I'm putting together a very short mini course where we're going to go through these directions, but first try out the complementary practice that follows this episode and start to really do the work. Subscribe, please, if you haven't already. This is a very small channel that I curate on my own, and the support means the world to me and to the growth of this concept of the heart mind and shifting our idea of the mind to the heart, starting to embody after trauma and really reclaiming our strengths, empowerment. Thank you so much. Share with anyone that might need to hear this take on forgiveness. And I'll see you next time. Travel well. Enjoy your prana.